Hello, I'm Jerry Lintner, and this is State of the Town, a monthly show when we sit with our first selectman, Lisa Heavner, and get brought up to date on the state of the town. Lisa, how are you?
I'm good, Jerry. How are you?
Well, I'm doing well. I feel safe. I sleep at night with you at the helm, and
Thank you.
yeah. So, how do you feel? You really plunged right into this. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's been wonderful. I'm working with town staff and Mary in this transition. I've worked with Mary, as you know, for 6 years. So
Well, let's go back on that a minute because, well, first of all, you're a family person, right?
Yeah,
You got a hubby and two
Two-
little boys.
not so little.
No, they're
Right.
not little. The and where are they? Are they out of high school?
They are. I've got 2 in college. I've got a senior at Kenyon College in Ohio. That's Rob. He was on the crew team at Simsbury High School.
Okay.
And Mike is a sophomore at Washington University in St. Louis, and he was on the robotics team at the high school. So
Oh,
two
cool.
very
That
different.
robotics team always, well, the crew team always does very well also. So they moved on from success to future success.
Yeah.
Okay, and I mean, you were degreed attorney?
Yes, I went to Haverford College and Georgetown Law School.
Ooh.
So
Haverford and Georgetown. Well, we got a smart one. How about that?
that's where I met my husband, Jim.
Okay, so he's smart too, I guess, huh? And he's an attorney, or
He is an attorney at the Hartford
okay? And you've been how long here in Simsbury?
since, I think, 2003.
Okay, but wow, you got here and pretty quickly. Then you got involved in a pretty demanding role because Board of Selectmen, right? In 206, 26.
No, I've been on it for 5.5 years, so
Okay.
2009, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you barely get your bearings, and then you got roped into it. How did that happen?
Well, I've always been involved in the schools. Parent volunteer there. I was president of the PTO at Henry James.
Oh, my God, you're one of those.
I'm one of those.
Oh, good Lord. We are in for it now. We'll get our knuckles wrapped. If we
There you go. That's right. Stay in line, Jerry. Well, actually, it was funny. I was on a lacrosse field with my son Mike was playing lacrosse with Mary's nephew, Zach.
Okay.
And Mary came up to me and she goes, Lise, I'd like you to run for the Board of Selectmen. And I said no.
And how did she know about you?
Because I had been president of the PTO and I was
Yeah.
a friend of her sister-in-law. So
Oh,
she kind
okay.
of knew who I was. And she came up to me and said, I want you to run for the Board of Selectmen. I walked away. I thought she was nuts.
Yeah.
I'd never thought of running for office. It wasn't something I'd contemplated, not something I wanted to do
Yeah.
because of the reputation, that you see on television, what people think of politics. At the national level, you think who would want any part of that? And so I walked away. And she called me the next day and said, let's go out for a cup of coffee.
Oh, she's so sly.
She's sly, and she won my heart with that cup of coffee. But what she said,
What she said was, listen, you're not getting off that easily.
that's not what she said. What she said was, I don't even need you to be a politician. I just want you to
Right.
continue doing what you've always done, which is volunteering for your community, except at the town level.
Right.
She said, and she made a great point. She said, what you do at the town level, you can make a difference.
Yeah.
The higher up you go, the less of a difference you make. What we do at the local level, I mean, maybe there are some big policy issues, but at the local level, everything you do, it's about the roads,
each
the school.
individual is
Right,
more effective.
yes.
Yeah, well, I'm just reflecting back, because interviewing the first selectman, actually, I guess this is the 24th year that I've done that. So,
Wow.
Mary in 2 different periods, and then there was Anita and Tom in between that. And, other than some things that recently that have been disappointing, this town, it used to be if you were on one of the committees or whatever, you were a politician. That's how it ran. And I mean, with a lot of the negative crapola that went with it. That evolved through the years. And I think Mary was a large part of that. And I think one of the things why people are so enthusiastic about you're known as a consensus builder, and that you really address the issues. So that it was bothersome to me to see some of that, because locally I didn't feel our people were like politicians. I felt our people were sincerely public servants. And then I thought that kind of disappeared a little. So I'm glad she talked you into it and that you're one of the people who say, hey, what I am is a public servant. So how do you love being a servant? Tell me, what's your favorite part?
Oh, the people, for
Yeah.
sure, because you get to interact with so many people in the community, and I love the fact that the more people you talk with, the broader your understanding of an issue, because everybody sees the world from where they sit, and
Right.
to have the opportunity to meet other people and where they sit and hear different issues from their perspective really helps, I think, the whole board make better decisions.
I have an idea. You could start a whole new collection thing. You know, the saying, well, until you've walked in the other person's shoes. So, like every time you've worked with somebody that gives you a new insight from their perspective, trade a pair of shoes with them. And then you could start lining up the shoes down the hall outside the first selectman's office. And if somebody comes and says, you know, you just don't listen, then I say, wait a minute. Let me show you this pair of shoes. They made the same point you did.
Jerry,
So.
start untying.
Okay,
You're gonna be the
absolutely.
first pair of shoes.
I have no points of view.
No, but
Only
it's true.
questions.
But it's wonderful to hear from people. Sometimes they open your mind, help you think about an issue in a way that you hadn't thought about before, and I love it when that happens.
Well, and that's great. And I know, no, I can't say every first selectman that I've encountered has been that way. But they haven't been like totally the opposite. But what I have found, and like Mary and with your orientation, sometimes it's very hard to get input from people.
It is,
You know, and
yeah.
it's like, you know, well, everything's fine. You know, and so it's hard to get the guidance. And so many times I've always said there are 12 ways to be right. And the one that's the most right is the one that everybody will support, you know, because it's the most popular. And if you can't get the voices, then that's hard to do. So,
Well, I have something to tell you then.
okay.
Well, I think you're so right about that, and that's why it's so important for elected officials not just to wait for people to come, but to reach out. So I'm holding my first open house on January 26th from 4 to 6 in this office, and I'm inviting the public to come in and let me know what's on their mind. What are you happy about? What are you worried about? What concerns do you have? What suggestions do you have?
And then, I don't know if Mary continued it, but for a while, weren't Monday nights, the reason Monday went longer, well, part of it was for people who wouldn't be out of work in time to do their town business.
Right.
But that they could also come in and gab then. So after you launch this one, are you,
Absolutely. I
Open
plan to
door
doing
policy?
Yeah. Well, I always have an open door policy. People I think who have known me for many years know that. I'm listed in the phone book. Pretty easily accessible. I always shop at Fitzgerald's. People stop me all the time, and I love to hear from people. People email me all the time. It's but you're right. We do
but they
also have
spell
to,
your name right.
sometimes.
They don't spell it like heavenly.
No, usually heave, but that's
Ooh,
true.
yuck, heave.
Well, I know. It's
No,
better than
okay.
heavy. I was once introduced as Lisa Heavy.
Lisa Heavy. Well,
Yeah.
you certainly aren't. So
Well, thank
that was a
you.
misnomer.
But you do have to reach out. So I will call, if there's an important issue, I'll call a broad range of people. I'll call my senior friends, friends who've got young kids, people who've got children in college or high school to try and get a broad view. Or, the other thing we do is every 2 years is we door knock. And I've run for election 3 times, so I've door knocked on 5,000 houses. And the way I get people to talk is I ask them, well, first ask them, is there anything on your mind?
You've missed a few if you've only
I
done
have missed.
5,000.
I know I have. I'm working on it, Jerry. I'm working on it. But the thing I'll ask people is, are you happy? And that usually will get them.
That's a great, open-ended.
And then they'll tell you what they're happy about in Simsbury, what they love.
Yeah.
Or they'll bring up something, I'm happy except for this one thing. And then you learn more about the town and what matters to them.
Well, first of all, I would feel like you have had a transition that most would not, given
This is
how
true.
things went, because you worked closely with Mary.
Yes.
I know. I saw you lots of things, the two of you together, and so you had an insight. But otherwise, boom! All of a sudden, for a person who started out saying, "No, I don't think so," now to be at the helm, and kind of like on a month's notice, how's that going?
It's going great. But like you said, I've worked with Mary closely for over half a decade.
Right.
So I felt like I was stepping into a situation where I was up to speed and ready to go because I had worked so closely with her. And then in addition to that, you walk into a situation with town staff where we have such excellent town staff that you're not walking into a situation that needs to be fixed.
Right.
Town staff already has my trust and respect. So
Yeah.
I'm walking into a good situation, not a bad situation. And they've been so supportive. And more importantly, the community has been so supportive of me. I've had
Yeah.
lots of people come up. and-
Well, you've earned it, that's why. What is that over in the corner that looks like a walking stick or a weapon?
That is a walking stick. It was given.
But
by-
it's taller than you are. How could that be a walking stick?
It is a walking. It was actually given to Mary Glassman. I
It's taller
received
than
it for.
she is.
Yes, it is. It's with the closing of the Ethel Walker property.
Oh.
So in
Okay. You could also use it for doing like bench presses.
you could. Yes, we do
That's
not,
quite a
but we
walking
could.
stick. That's quite a walking stick. So now here you are, and you came in. I think, I don't think people see it so much, but isn't this a really intense part of the budget session in
We're-
the cycle?
Well, we're just starting the budget process. The first thing I did when I started work here 6 days ago was begin the budget process. I met with the director of finance and town staff to talk about the process and to begin preparing the budget. And the way it works is I'll prepare the first selectman's budget and present it to the Board of Selectmen no later than March 1st
Okay.
for public considerations. But this year is a tough year, Jer, as I guess all are, but we're facing a few challenges that
Well, let's talk about some of those.
okay. Well, at the
I mean, you talk about them. I'll listen and say, glad she has to deal with it.
well, I was just in the last 2 days. I was attending a bunch of regional group discussions with municipal leaders and state leaders about the budget. So CCM and COST, Council of Small Towns, about what challenges we're going to face from the state. We heard from both the governor and the comptroller about how state finances will impact the municipalities. And there are a couple big issues out there. One, the Connecticut DEEP is considering a new policy on their stormwater disposal, which will put increased regulations on towns in terms of reporting, street cleaning, basin cleaning. But the bottom line is, if those go into effect as proposed, the impact to my budget is $450,000.
Whoa. Well, okay, so let's start right now. How many of you will spend at least a couple days a week cleaning the sewer or a storm basin? How many hands? Oh, my God, look, Lisa. Oh, wait.
Taken care of, right? All right, well,
Wow.
cross that on my...
So DEP is what?
The Department of, yeah,
deep.
yeah. Well, they do
It's
the environmental,
environmental?
yes, regulations. And there, as you can imagine, there's been a tremendous pushback from the municipalities because
Sure.
while we certainly love the environment, clean water, and are supportive of that, and especially in this town, the regulations they put in are very onerous on administrative level. So we'd have to hire 2 people just to meet the administrative level on that. And ironically, if they care so much about the environment, these regulations do not apply to the state DOT. So it's strange. Now that we've since heard, although we have not seen, that they're walking that back a little bit. What we heard from the governor, though,
You know, but on some, I think they should look at the sewers first, because everybody in Simsbury is so tidy. Probably our sewers are really clean. And if you were to ask us, don't put it in the toilet, put it in a plastic bag with dogs, and then bring it and drop it off somewhere, everybody would do that.
we're
And
not asking that. We
No,
are
yeah.
not asking that. Just to be clear.
So how does one meet a standard? How is the standard judged?
Well, I think you raise a great point. And part of the objection was some towns like Simsbury already do a great job.
Yeah.
So why are they putting on these administrative burdens to towns that are doing a good job?
Right.
And I think that's where a lot of the pushback is. What we did hear from the governor is that the DEP is walking back some of the mandates, but what we also heard from the governor is they're not walking them back all the way. So I know there will be a budgetary impact for us going forward, and I don't know what it is. So that's one uncertainty we're dealing with. The governor also indicated that, in the past, they've held municipalities harmless in terms of educational cost sharing and street money, and this year, we didn't get that guarantee. they're going to make every effort to hold us harmless, but I think we're going to have to plan for a possible reduction in state aid, which has to be made up by the citizens of Simsbury.
Well, possible reduction, and these go back to historical figures. But at one point, the fact was like on state taxes, for every dollar Simsbury pays, a nickel comes back.
We're up to 8 cents.
Say what?
We were up to 8 cents as of
8
last
cents.
year.
Oh,
Yes.
well, we've lived with a nickel before, so is this going to cost us more than 3 cents on the dollar? That's that's almost $500,000.
Yeah, it's a lot. 450,000 is, of course, more than 2% budget increase.
Yeah.
180,000 is a 1% budget increase for
Okay,
me.
so-
And on top of that, we've got normal contractual obligations we have to meet. Most of our budget is salary and people, and normal pay raises.
Let's march. Yeah, signs will go up over the mountain. They converge from Canton, Avon, Granby, Bloomfield, up and over the mountain we go and down to the Capitol, and you in the lead and waving your flag saying,
Wearing your shoes?
your costs are too deep. Yeah, you can wear my shoes. Fine, that's fine. Or you can wear a different pair every so far, and then you say, I represent all of these different points of view.
Right.
I've walked in these shoes. Well, I'm glad to know that. I had no idea. This has not been news. I mean, I watch the news every night. I've not heard it, so.
Well, everybody's sort of hopeful that now that the financial impacts are out there, some of these are required by the EPA, and of course we want to be in compliance with the EPA. One of the concerns is that the state is going beyond what the EPA is requiring for municipalities, but not imposing those same restrictions on themselves.
Yeah.
So we're following it closely. I haven't seen the final numbers, but it's something we're watching because we don't know what that impact. And you have the normal salary increases, and we're going to try and make a correction at Simsbury Farms. For the last few years, they cannot operate entirely within the special fund that they have set
really?
up. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit, because I remember when the special fund was created, and wasn't that then at some point they would be self-sustaining
Right.
based on charges?
Right.
So how close did we get?
Well, it's different every year. But we have had to make transfers from the general fund to make them whole in the last few years. And we set up a
Jerry Toner, this is your fault.
No,
I
it's
think.
actually not Jerry's fault.
Oh, see, look how she defends you.
Absolutely.
See, the staff is wonderful here.
No,
so
but
Jerry,
it's true.
Leave your shoes outside the door.
This one is actually true. It's not Jerry's fault. There was an accounting shift that we did in 2008, and they wanted to try it, so it was an experiment.
Well, by the way, let me say, I think Jerry and his staff do
They
a
do.
fantastic job. So
They really
I was
do.
having a little fun.
But just to be clear, so the public knows, it is not Jerry's fault. But we are trying to correct a situation. And in doing that, I'll probably absorb 90,000 or somewhere around that into my operating budget, which is 0.5%.
So what was the accounting stuff that changed?
Well, it was how you assigned staff. Like Jerry's staff does some stuff at Simsbury Farms, but they do some stuff elsewhere.
Yeah.
And it was just a shift. There was probably too much in the farms, even though their duties are
I see
now
what you're saying.
beyond the farms. So it's fair. It's fair what they're doing, and it's not Jerry's fault. And we have to make a correction. And the fact is, what Jerry does are protect our gems, like
Yeah.
Simsbury Farms. It's something we care about, and we have to
Well,
be
you
good
know,
stewards.
The other thing that I want to give a nod to, get ready, Orlando, because of my involvement with the Flower Bridge.
Yeah.
And, I mean, Parks and Rec does a lot of stuff in terms of maintenance that people just don't even associate.
That's exactly right.
Right. So, but it was a couple years ago, and the problem had been when the snow was piled up, some of the water mechanicals were getting buried and damaged and that. So we'd talked to Orlando, would it be possible to put any kind of barium during the winter so they would know not to pile snow there? Not only did he do that, but he and his crew painted like this sunburst on them, which was like folk art, and it was like, that is so cool that people who have a job to do that's pretty much to be at the beck and call of everybody would go that extra mile, and do it. That was wonderful.
Well, and you're exactly right. I'm visiting all the departments, and I recently went out to Parks and Rec and met with all the staff out there, and they are phenomenal.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm saying it's no one's fault. We're just correcting a situation as his department's responsibilities have grown. We need to accommodate those better. That's all.
Well, it also seems to me over the years, and now I'm going back a lot of years, that jobs have been consolidated, reorganized. And, as I look around, I mean, I don't see excess on the staff here, so I don't know, it's kind of like what's been done in that way has been done. So I don't know where, the give and take, I don't know where you take from.
Well, those are some of the challenges. We're gonna be looking for savings in other aspects of the budget. Thankfully, we've had, grand list growth because of some of our economic development initiatives that we've done, so that will help. The thing to keep in mind, even though our budget might increase a little bit, you look at the end game, what's it going to do to your taxes?
Right.
And your taxes are affected not only by budget growth, but by revenue growth from grand list new development. So that can help offset an increasing budget. We're working, yeah.
Speaking about that, economic development, because this one I was a little behind the saddle on. I was certainly aware of Dorset Crossing when it first opened up, and I was aware of the walk-in, emergency facility. I was aware of the building that would go up, for people with MS. And then all of a sudden, boom! It's like there's a whole town there. And so I've read only a little bit, and that it is, and I think the plans deviated some from what it was going to be initially, although it sounds like still maybe the special facilities are up front, and then there is specialty housing, and then maybe more like studios.
Yeah, there's some
and then as you
market rate housing.
get back, I thought there were going to be big individual houses there. There are big buildings there, but it looks like,
They're apartments.
a lot of apartments. Wow.
Well, it's sort of an interesting trend, and it'll be interesting to see what our community thinks of them. But what we're seeing among millennials is that a lot of them they don't go to one company and stay there for 50 years. They move, they transfer 3 to 5 years, and so they don't want to buy a house.
Right.
They are more interested in renting, and also with the Great Recession, the economy lends itself to more rentals. So that's why throughout the Hartford area, we're seeing more of those.
Well, yeah. Downtown Hartford, just recently in the paper, some of these old buildings being converted. I started adding up the number of new apartments. But I have associates who are millennium people. And that is a part of their thinking. And they do look, at apartments, and it's like, let me try this place out, and if this town or city doesn't work for me, there's not an opportunity here in the next job, then I don't have a house that I have to unload. That the rental prices are like on houses in town here. I mean, I look at it and I think, wow, that is what you get for rental, pays your taxes, your mortgage, your maintenance, your insurance, and you make a profit. So that gets pretty expensive. So if you're like a young person or a young couple together, probably there is a big need for that kind of housing.
And what's sort of interesting is if you look at what makes a community healthy, you want to have an entry for millennials who are coming in. And because if you are renting in a community, you're more likely to buy in a community. So there has to be some amount. And also an exit for those who want to downside. As seniors who want to stay in the community, they need an option.
Well, actually, you mentioned that, and my wife and I, we're fortunate to have very good health. We're big gardeners. We have 4 flights of stairs in our house.
Right.
Well, that's great. It saves us a gym fee. But you have to at some point say, one of these days I'm going to go down to dig that vole out of the ground, and I'm not going to be able to get up again. Or I wake up in the morning and it's like, oh, I can't get downstairs. So then you start looking around and you love the town. So you say you don't want to leave the town. And then you stop and you think, wow, how many rooms do we actually live in?
Right.
And then you have all of these extra rooms. So no, I think there is a very nice
And the key is
market for
how
that.
many, at some point you have too many. So
Oh,
we'll
yeah.
be watching that closely.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I see what you mean, like too many.
Apartments.
Apartment.
I mean,
So-
how much does our community want of those?
Is there any progress on the senior center and its potential location down in the center?
Well, we have 2 locations. The building committee recommended a state lot behind
Yeah, yeah.
Bank of America. So that was their recommendation. It will have to come before the Board of Selectmen. Some members indicated that they were still interested in considering Eno. So as I understand, there are 2 options, but we'll ask the board if there's any other options they want to consider.
Okay.
But those are the 2 we'll have to be making a decision probably in the next month or so, because we're starting to plan for our budget.
Well, now, this is the only time I'm going to make this offer, but we are probably down to 3 or 4 minutes. So usually I pick and choose and go wherever I want to. But given this is your first time out, is there anything you want to fit in this last section that especially you'd like people to be aware of? And thanks for the deep thing. I think that's great.
Well, I guess my priorities are, I have 3 main priorities to deliver, a compassionate, kind, open, and effective government is number 1.
How do we say that again? That sounds fancy.
Oh, let's see if I can remember it.
Compassionate government.
Yeah.
Isn't that an oxymoron? No.
No, it's not. But I think, we're a community. As I say, government isn't somebody else, it's your neighbor.
Yeah.
And so that's one priority. The other is, our record of fiscal responsibility, which included the first ever tax decrease in our town's history.
Yeah.
And the last is seeking out public input on matters that affect our vision for the town, what we want to preserve and what we want to develop. And the most important thing I want to get out there is I want to hear from you. Let me know what's important to you, what you care about.
Snap. That's all? Well, no, that's great.
The devil's in the details, and
That's
we'll talk
great.
about those the next time.
Yeah. No, we will do that. And, I guess because I've seen there's so many facets to this job, and I've seen it through the years, what needs to be emphasized, shifts, and the posture that has to be taken. I mean, truthfully, from my perspective, and I would rather it not be so, but you absolutely must, as a public servant, start out with the orientation you have. But Machiavelli and the Prince was not all wrong. I mean, at times you have to go for number 3 when really 1 and 2 would have been ideal, but the thing that's going to happen is number 3, or the chances for that, and that's still better than nothing happening. And that's wearing. I mean, that's wearing. I see.
But that's life.
Well, it is life, but I also think that it's concentrated life in the throne on which you sit.
Hardly.
a lot of things stop there and come to roost and have to be solved.
Well, but that's, luckily we have a great community that can help me do that.
Yeah, okay.
So we do. And they're supportive and they're willing to share their opinions, and that makes better decision makers of all of us.
Okay, so there was something else that was happening so Monday you have the extended hours still. Oh, I know. I was thinking about open space, because you have a meeting, weekly on Wednesdays, like after this with open space, or is that just once a month?
I think just once a month.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, open space. We're going to be looking at the Betty Hudson property, what to do down by the Flower Bridge.
I wouldn't call it Betty's Beach. I want clothing optional.
No.
No? Oh, okay. You may not wear swim trunks. It's not optional.
You must wear swim trunks. So we're doing that. We're going to look at the Walker. How are we good stewards of that property?
Oh, the other thing I'd like to have on the list is sort of, the subject of open space, and that because there's so much divided around and the cost of maintenance on that. And I wonder if some of that becomes, at some point, available to private buyers. Is that looked at as a possibility?
Well, certainly, we have some open space that's located behind people's homes that nobody has access to, that they may want to capture, and that has no
Gotcha.
public use, and it's not. But we have to evaluate, is there habitat that we're trying to protect, or
Okay.
other species?
Well, Lisa, I want to thank you. I think you are a natural communicator. We zipped through this. See, it seems like there's never enough time, right?
We didn't even get to half of what I
I
wanted to talk
know,
about.
so you better hold on to that. Well, that'll
All
be
right.
old news by next time. So, by the way, you had a thing on Simsbury patch.com. Just a little statement. I thought that was a nice way. I think a lot of people look at that. By the way, it was very, very articulate and
Thank you.
very straightforward and reflective of you. So, I thank you for the time.
you,
I
Jerry.
look forward to these
thank you,
monthly
Althea.
meetings. Yes. And hopefully we'll see you again next month.